Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 in our chats with Emily, as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are in the Thomas H. Johnson edition, and we turn now to poem 700. And I'll pause for a moment and say congratulations, you've now made it 700 poems into a volume of 1,775 poems. You do the math, and hopefully we'll still be standing at the end of this study together. Now, when this poem was first published, it was in 1896 called The Balloon, which, Emily never titled her poetry. And some of you will say, well, that's got to be the most prosaic title ever given to a poem. And in some ways, I think it will work, that you will approach this poem understanding, okay, it's about a balloon, but is it? Okay, and even write in your notes, possibly hot air balloon, because that even makes this poem that much more intriguing. Now, I want to begin with poem 505. We've studied this one already. Our assumptions are that you've been working with us at learnstrong.net. Down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily is our playlist. I'm hopeful that you've worked through our set of introductory comments as well as the preceding 699 poems. We just finished with 699, The Judges Like the Owl. You'll remember, when we did 505, I gestured that we would come back to this poem, I believe. Watch this. I would not paint a picture. I'd rather be the one. Its bright impossibility to dwell delicious on, and wonder how the fingers feel, whose rare celestial stir evokes so sweet a torment, such sumptuous despair. I would not talk like cornets. I'd rather be the one, raised softly to the ceilings, and out and easy on, through villages of ether. We'll be to crowds in a moment. Myself endured balloon. You'll want to pay attention to that and circle it if you're in your volume. By but a lip of metal, the pier to my pontoon. Nor would I be a poet. It's finer, own the ear, enamored, impotent, content, the license to revere a privilege so awful. What would the dower be, had I the art to stun myself with bolts of melody? Now, this is a poem that is often read as a metaphor for aspiration, so you can write that one down. It's often called by scholars a symbolic narrative, and in Emily, it is very rare. We'll see it when we do poem 754, My Life Had Stood a Loaded Gun. Very rarely does Emily play this kind of descriptive narrative game. It is, by one scholar, therefore, cautioned to approach it warily, because it'll be easy for us to jump to, oh, this is symbolism of a kind, but we want to make sure that we are parsing out all the different potential symbolic readings of this poem. Now, ostensibly, we are watching a hot air balloon that ascends and then crashes back down to earth. Okay, so this is just to let you know what you're about to read. But of course, think about what goes up must come down, and what's the most famous story in mythology about that? You're right, it is the Daedalus myth. And of course, Daedalus will build those wings for his son Icarus, tell him, don't fly too close to the sun, because the wax is on the wings, and when the wax melts off the wings, jag. Right? Okay. So this will be a part of our poem. One scholar has said it this way: a fall from the mythic into the flat matter of fact. And Wolfe will in fact kind of continue with some of that by saying the following: part of the immense strength of Dickinson's poetry comes from the fact that she gives every evidence of being highly self-conscious about the problems that attended her mission, poetic mission, and the consequences that flowed from it. Sometimes the protean character of the language at her disposal became itself the subject of her scrutiny. For example, now she'll reference poem 700. The following poem, that is to say, you've seen balloons set, haven't you? The following poem not only walks the razor's edge, unlike many other poems that contain the same sort of linguistic tension, it comments upon its own ambiguities. Let's enjoy the poem now, and maybe we've spiked your interest to want to read it. You've seen balloons set, haven't you? So stately they ascend. It is as swans discarded you for duty's diamond. Their liquid feet go softly out upon a sea of blonde. They spurn the air as 'twere too mean for creatures so renowned. Their ribbons just beyond the eye. They struggle, some for breath, and yet the crowd applaud below. They would not encore death. The gilded creature strains and spins, trips frantic in a tree, tears open her imperial veins, and tumbles in the sea. The crowd retire with an oath. The dust in the streets go down, and clerks in counting rooms observe 'twas only a balloon. Now, the brilliance of this poem is that she paints a profound word picture of watching a balloon go up gracefully and come down not so gracefully. But right away, let's put it on our notes. Notice that there's two different perspectives in this poem. There is the balloon going up, and then there's everyone watching it that are so excited at first to watch it go up, and then when it comes down into the sea, right, it gets jacked, they kind of walk away going, it was just a balloon after all. Let's begin. I love that she includes you in this poem. One of the reasons we called our series Chats with Emily is this communicative informality that Emily possesses in so many of her poems. It's almost like she does it like this. You know what I'm talking about. You've seen those hot air balloons that go up, right? Haven't you? Like, you're familiar with that, right? And you kind of go, you nod to her and you go, yeah, I've seen that. So, and then all of a sudden she starts talking about it. What it's like. When you first see a hot air balloon go up, and for those of us that obviously have seen this, it's majestic, right? These huge balloons with all of their, ribbons and everything, up they go. It's quite remarkable. So, stately, they ascend. Now, it is remarkable, ascend, and her use of the word ascend. It takes us back, you'll remember, to poem 306. The soul's superior instances occur to her alone. When friend and earth's occasion have infinite withdrawn, or she herself ascended to too remote a height for lower recognition than her omnipotent. This moral abolition is seldom, but as fair as appreciation, subject to autocratic air. Eternity's disclosure to favorites a few of the colossal substance of immortality. Ascended was used in poem 93 and 167, 564, obviously here in 306, 700, of course, we're studying. You'll want to run it to ground, 1421, 1450, 1475. You'll want to write down all three of them especially, and study her use of the word ascended. That is to say, to go from the ground up. Okay? Now, of course, think about how many of her poems will reference birds and bird flight. And the idea that you'll remember even in 328, a bird shall say in 328, unrolled his feathers and rode him softer home. Okay, so the idea of flight. You've seen balloons set, haven't you? Stately they ascend. It is as swans discarded you. Now, of course, think about the swan song. And what is it about the swan song? Well, the one moment you hear the swan is, of course, at its death. Yes, okay? So it is already a giveaway. Then Emily's playing games with this whole notion of the swan. Again, notice capitalized. Discarded you for duty's diamond. Now, in other words, up to the sky, okay? And why do swans fly? And they are beautiful. They're diamonds, right? They're liquid feet. Now, is she talking about swans or is she talking about the balloon? Well, most of you will say, well, she's using swans as a reference that these balloons go up so beautiful, so gracefully. Their liquid feet go softly out upon a sea of blonde. Poets will spend their whole life and never once be able to capture the flight of either balloons or birds with such a brilliant word picture. Their liquid feet go softly out upon a sea of blonde. It's quite majestic. They spurn the air. Notice all the S sounds of this poem, right? Spurn, swan, spins, tears, tumbles. We're hearing all these S sounds, right? They spurn the air. Did you notice capitalized? Don't miss it. Emily is writing about hot air balloons going up, but she's clearly writing about something else as well. Is it the poetic enterprise They're aspirations of poets to fly high. And of course, if you fly high, you couldn't get too close to the right. They spurn the air as 'twere too mean for creatures so renowned. I can't think of, I can't read this and not think of Yeats's Wild Swans at Cooley. We've given a full lecture on it at learnstrong.net. They're ribbons just beyond the eye. Now, I'm teaching you to read very closely now, because you want to circle the word just. Because that word, and we of course saw that word in a number of poems earlier, right? Especially 698 with the reference to just and justice. Just here suggests just out of reach, right? They're ribbons just beyond the eye. By the way, notice the last line of the poem. It's only a balloon. You could, of course, invent it as it's just a balloon. In other words, the balloon goes just high enough that the watching crowd can't quite see it so well anymore. They're ribbons just beyond the eye. They struggle. Some. Again, you're hearing all these S sounds. By the way, notice we go from spurn to struggle. For breath. Now, is it the ribbons that are struggling for breath, or is it the crowd that's struggling for breath? Because it's witnessing what? Jack, right? And yet, the crowd, notice the use of this word crowd here, right? The group, the collective, if you will. The crowd applaud below. I mean, I read this and can't think of, I got to think of Kafka's Hunger Artist, that classic short story. You may want to write that one down and run that one to ground. It's brilliant, brilliant short story. We can lectures at learnstrong.net over. And yet the crowd applaud below. They would not encore dash death, capitalized death. You'll remember death being mentioned in 135 poems. Just now pay attention to what's coming. All the foreshadowing is there for you. If you've been reading closely, you know, something bad's about to happen to this balloon as the swan will make its swan song. Notice she'll call it the gilded creature strains. Now we're back, obviously, to the balloon. Gilded, you'll remember from 287, 353, and 635. The gilded creature strains and spins, trips, frantic in a tree, tears open her imperial veins. Whoa! Did you notice this? Before we were speaking of these balloons in the plural, and now all of a sudden we're going from one balloon, from many balloons to one balloon. We went from swans, many, to one. And do you notice that the pronoun she decides to use is a feminine pronoun? Tears open her imperial veins and tumbles in the sea. Jack. The crowd, now we're back to the crowd, retire. What? It should be retires. Very interesting, right? The crowd retire with an oath. Like, bummer luck for us. We were hoping to see more. The dust in streets go down. Again, dust should be goes down, right? And clerks in counting rooms observe it was only a balloon. At the end, there doesn't seem to be any sense or caring at all about what has just transpired. For those of you that know Frost's classic Out, Out, and they, because they were not the ones, turned to their own affairs at the conclusion of that poem. Okay, what are we going to do at 2A with a poem like this? I think our argument is that the only problem with ascending is that there must be a descending. It's always in the possibility of the fall. At 2B, the word choices here are quite remarkable. Strains, spurns, trips, tears, as we said. I'd like to, at 3A, take us to a number of different places. When we get to 12:15, we'll come back. I bet with every wind that blew till nature in chagrin employed a fact to face me and scuttle my balloon. This idea of the balloon getting jacked is a word picture we'll come back to. Again, I mentioned 754, another symbolic narrative, one of her most famous poems, My Life Close Had Stood a Loaded Gun, and of course the Daedalus Icarus. But I want to go, and I mentioned Kafka's Hunger Artist, but I want to go now to our study of T.S. Eliot's Four Quartets. And I've said to you guys before that I think much of Four Quartets has been influenced by Emily's stuff. Do you remember part 5? We've given full lectures at learnstrong.net. Words move. Music moves only in time. But that which is only living can only die. Words after speech reach into the silence. Only by the form, the pattern, can words or music reach the stillness as a Chinese jar still moves perpetually in its stillness. Not the stillness of the violin while the note lasts, not that only, but the coexistence, or say that the end precedes the beginning, and the end and the beginning were always there before the beginning, and after the end, and all is always now. Words string, crack, and sometimes break under the burden, under the tension, slip, slide, perish, decay with imprecision, will not stay in place, will not stay still. Well, I think, you can see obviously the connections we're trying to make there. Finding a 3B, to own a poem like this, when was a time that you aspired for your balloon to go up? And maybe it went a little too high. Thank you.